Hey everybody, this is Josh Runquist for Heavy Debriefings, and we've entered a new decade here with the top 10 albums of 2010. Let's just get right into it with number 10. Starting at number 10 is Demian's with Mute, the sophomore album, and the last time you're going to see him on this list, unfortunately. But I truly do love this album. Everything that I loved about Building an Empire is a bit more refined on Mute, and that can be good or bad depending on how you look at it, because a lot more of the progressive elements are gone and it's a bit more cinematic, but more than anything it's a bit more streamlined post-rock, art rock, alternative rock, which is not a bad thing. It shows the creativity that goes throughout Demian's. The style is just very refined and very catchy at the same time. It's an overlooked album, but then again, Demian's is an overlooked band. And if you checked out Building an Empire from the previous list that they were on, you should go check out Mute and see if it's for you. Coming in at number 9 is James LaBrie with Static Impulse, and don't let the words on screen fool you. It is true. James LaBrie did melodic death metal, specifically on 2 particular albums. This is the first of those 2, but also don't get me wrong, James LaBrie is not the one doing the growls. That, of course, is Peter Wildor of Darkane doing the vocals there, while James LaBrie is doing his Dream Theater best. It is an interesting combination that you just don't see coming. It is as if James LaBrie joined Soilwork. It sounds weird on paper, but it works so very, very well. The songs are short, snappy, to the point, and fun. So if you don't like the wanky side of Dream Theater, this is an album I think you might actually enjoy. Although if you don't like growls, first of all, I'm surprised you're checking out my YouTube channel. But second, you might actually grow into him because Peter Wildor is very, very good at doing death growls, and you might actually be won over by them. This is a very underrated album, and unfortunately, every time James LaBrie was going to go out on a solo tour in North America, he canceled it. So I never got to see these songs live. And one of those shows was going to happen in Minnesota, which really, really bummed me out. But again, there will always be the music. And you should give this one a chance if, again, the idea of James LaBrie and Soilwork mixed together to create perfect Static Impulse sounds like something up your alley. Coming in at number 8 is Blind Guardian with At the Edge of Time. And I think it's very possible to say this might be the best Blind Guardian album of the 21st century. There's still something to be said about the brand new album, but I think it's still too new to be able to really say that. But At the Edge of Time, yeah, I think it is the best album of the 21st century for Blind Guardian, Hansi, and company. Everything that you love about Blind Guardian is on this album in at least one track. The speed, the intensity, the ferocity, the sappiness, the symphonics, the folk elements, the power metal elements, the speed metal elements, it's all here. It is a perfect Blind Guardian album. And I was so fortunate to be able to see Blind Guardian on this tour. I have Hansi's set list. He was sick that night and still sounded impeccable. And I got sick a couple days later with his same illness. Funny how that works out when you stand right in front of him. But all of that said, yeah, if you're looking for top tier pinnacle Blind Guardian of the 21st century, it is At the Edge of Time. Go check it out now. Coming in at number 7 is Opus Eponymous from Ghost. So it's time to get very, very pissed. They sound like Nickelback, they sound like Scooby-Doo, they sound like... Quit whining. First of all, this is an amazing occult rock album. It sounds like Blue Oyster Cult meets Merciful Fate, and I always love that side of them. I love the original sound of Ghost. I love all the eras of Ghost in their own different ways, and I don't have a problem with any of their albums. I obviously have an order of what I like most, but this is still probably my favorite Ghost album. The songs are short and sweet, it's got that great original satanic occult feel behind it, and yeah, of course it's meant to be fun. Metal isn't always meant to be serious. This coming from a guy who loves funeral doom metal almost more than any other genre these days. You gotta have fun. And that's what this album is. It's just pure fun from Papa and company. And if you can't enjoy that, then, go listen to more serious stuff. But if you just want some fun, hard rock and metal, Ghost is the band for you. And if you want the most sinister album that they've made, you should check out their debut album. Coming in at number 6 is Ishan with After. And I am so very confused because I keep seeing people say Ishan, and as you can clearly see by the letters on the screen, the S comes after the H, so E-san. Anyways, this is the third album from the solo act, originally from Emperor, and this is my favorite album that he's ever made. It's got everything I love, and it's right in the for fans of section extreme progressive black metal. And it's got a lot of great experimental jazzy moments going on there as well, thanks to Jurgen of Shining, and this album is just absolutely bonkers in the best way possible. It's jazzy, it's black metal, it's prog, it's experimental, and that is basically Ishan in a nutshell. And what I love about his solo work is no album sounds the same. Some of them are more straight up black metal, some of them are more strange avant-garde albums, some of them are more cock rock albums, but they never sound the same. You never know what you're going to get with Ishan. And that's what I appreciate about him. You'll never know what you're going to get. But with After, to me, it's my favorite album that he's done. Not necessarily the best, but it's my favorite. You should go check it out for that reason. And number 5 is a band that sadly became more of a flash of a pan band. They were a blink or you miss it band. Mutiny Within with their self-titled debut album. And it had so much of what I was looking for at the time. Progressive metal and melodic death metal fused together to create some of the catchiest progressive death metal songs that you were ever going to hear. Some of the greatest clean vocals that were out there with incredible screams and growls, magnificent guitar and bass playing, keyboard wizardry, and absolutely jaw-dropping drums. It had everything I was looking for, and they toured their asses off on this album. Then they disappeared. Their second album was basically a B-sides demo album, and their latest album, as of several years ago, is an album where they didn't even record in the same studio together. They all recorded in different spots, so it never really felt like it captured the same thing that they were trying to do before, which breaks my heart, because I love this album so much. I got to see these guys open for Sonata Arctica of all bands, and they did a magnificent show. And it was the only time I got to see them. I got the set list, I bought the album at the show, they all autographed it. I'm still friends with some of the guys to this day. And I really wish everything could have went in the right direction for this band, because they really had everything on this album. But life throws curveballs. And while I would still recommend checking out the other two albums, especially their last album, this is the best album. This is definitively their best album. It's got everything that you would be looking for from the band, and I just can't sell it better than that. It's really become one of the most underrated albums of the 2010s, and you should go check it out for yourself and discover the magic of Mutiny Within. Coming in at number 4 is Anathema with We're Here Because We're Here, the beginning of their perfect 3-album suite. And by that I mean from We're Here Because We're Here to Weather Systems to Distant Satellites, pure and utter perfection in my eyes. And it started here when they decided to do a bit of a course correction in their sound. They took a few years off, wanted to figure out who they wanted to be, and they decided to write some of the most emotional progressive rock you will ever hear in your entire life. And of course, a lot of that has to do with the post-rock and art rock feels, the atmospheric moments that are throughout the entire album. But that's not to say that the vocals, the melodies, the harmonies, and the overall song structures don't just want to make you weep as well. It's all of it combined, and this album, the next album, and the penultimate album are albums that just make me tear up. It is so captivating, and I love this band to death, and unfortunately they're gone. And I'm not sure what is going to happen with the next band known as Weather Systems. I really, really hope that that material sees the light of day. I would love to see what they're going to be doing. But until then, we still have Anathema, and hopefully that never goes away. And if you've never checked out the band before, or if you only like their gothic doom metal sound, yes, they did used to sound like that, you need to give this album a chance. It really is one of the best albums of the 2010s, and one of the best albums of the 21st century. And number 3 is the final album from Nevermore, The Obsidian Conspiracy. And this is a very underrated album, because again, it broke up the band. This was the band's last attempt to try to make something work, and they decided to take things in a little bit of a different direction. While there are some proggier moments, some more atmospheric moments that go on throughout, it is a bit of a course correction to be a little more mainstream. They have some songs on here that would have fit perfectly on Top 40 Rock Radio at the time, but unfortunately that was just not in the cards. And of course the band broke up pretty much right after touring with this album, and it breaks my heart to this day, but thankfully I got to see Nevermore in 2010, Halloween 2010. I got to see them, and they were doing this album, their final US tour, and they just did everything I would have wanted them to do on that show. And they did a good chunk off of this album. It is my second favorite Nevermore album. It's got so many things that I love about the band. Everyone is on fire on this album. They really tried so hard to keep everything in line, but it still just fell apart. But if you've never checked out Nevermore before, and you want probably the most cohesive, almost safe commercial album that they've made, you should check out the Obsidian Conspiracy. Although if you want the best, that is still Dead Heart in a Dead World, but if you want the safest, go with the Obsidian Conspiracy. Coming in at number 2 is Trypticon with Milana Kazmata, one of the most crushing debut albums to ever exist. And I don't mean that just because of the tones that are created by the guitar, or the drums and the bass. I don't mean that just because of the production, the mixing, and the mastering. I, of course, mean that by lyrically, as Tom G. Warrior, after the demise of Celtic Frost, created Trypticon to pretty much deal with his battles with mental health, and between this and the next album, which I guarantee you will be coming up in the future in this series, are some of the most darkest, crushing, most realistic looks at mental health struggles you will ever find. This album in particular just crushes everything in its path. It's so doomy, it's so gothic, it's so extreme, and it hits so many different variations of avant-garde, gothic, doom, death, black, death, everything that you're looking for in the heaviest substances of the human psyche, but in metal in general. And all you have to do is just listen to the closing track, The Prolonging, to be recognized as one of the most realistic looks at mental health struggles in there, just dealing with the demons in your head. And, well, I don't want to give away what happens. You should just check it out for yourself. But yeah, if you want one of the most devastating bands in the world, check out Trypticon. And you have, at least right now, only 2 albums to choose from. I hope they're working on a 3rd album. I've heard rumors about that. But you might as well just start at the beginning. Start with Milana Kazmata, and then the next album will rip your soul apart. But here, you start to feel the problems creeping up, and it's the best thing that you could ever feel for cathartic feelings. And finally, at number 1, my favorite album of 2010 is Egglocke with Marrow of the Spirit. The most raw album that they've put out, and the most ambitious album that they put out, but easily my second favorite album that they put out. Yes, The Mantle is still my favorite Egglocke album, but this is my favorite for the polar opposite reasons that The Mantle was when that came out in 2002. With this particular album, it is so raw. The black metal feelings behind it, the fear that induces from this album, the ghost-like feelings that happen within it. It almost feels like an album of death. It's like you're either drowning or you get lost in the woods, you get burned in an effigy. There's so many different ways you could look at this, but it is such an evil, brutal, sadistic look at Egglocke while being some of the most beautiful black metal you will ever hear, which is such an odd thing to say, but the way they incorporate folk elements and post-metal and avant-garde tendencies into their black metal side of Egglocke just work perfectly for this album. And while I don't see enough people talking about it, probably because the production is the polar opposite of the previous album, which is so pristine, too pristine for the band, that they want to do the exact opposite with Marrow of the Spirit, I think it fully fits the album perfectly. And if you want some of the most well-crafted, blackened folk metal that you're ever gonna hear, you need to check out Marrow of the Spirit. It is truly, again, one of the best albums of the 21st century. And there you have it, folks, my top 10 albums of 2010. What do you think? Did you make any new discoveries here? Did I leave out some albums you wanted? Did you find anything that is off-putting? Do you just want to give me crap for my own personal opinion? All of that and more, leave it down below. And of course, if you want to keep seeing more stuff like this, I would really encourage you to Like, comment, share, subscribe, all of that stuff that I hate talking about, but is a necessary evil to be able to continue doing this to where you can see it, because subscribing is just not enough. But until next time, where we talk about the top 10 albums of 2011, my next interview, review, top 10 list, or any other kind of video I put up here on the Heavy Debriefings YouTube channel. For Heavy Debriefings, this is Josh Runquist, and see ya.